Welcome back to our channels, Warriors. We are still growing. If you haven't had your prima smash that subscribe button, go ahead and have them smash it right now. First and foremost, let me give a shout out to the following patrons: Mikey559, Marius, Andrew, Louise, CharMandy, Robert, Johnny Lowe, Chevelle 66, Renso, GiGi, Abuelitas Journey, and DAUSHERRERO. If you haven't already signed up in the description below, you're missing out. This episode right here is gonna be about SNY gangs, sensitive needs yards gangs. Hector, for the love of God, please talk about SNY gangs. I always heard you say they were there. You don't like talking about them. You didn't identify them. You didn't address them. You didn't acknowledge them. This is all true. This is 100% true. But for some of you guys that want to know, which is a lot of you guys, right? Let's just say you're general population. You never went to that side. You don't know what it looks like. It looks like a free-for-all is what it looks like, period. You guys have to understand, there can be some bias. There can be some bias. There probably is in this episode because all I know is what I know from down south, right? Donovan. When I was at Centinela State Prison, there was one SNY yard Delta that got flipped right before I left. But there, as far as SNY gangs, no. At that time, no. There was they hadn't established themselves there yet. Donovan, man, oh my God. Oh, wow. So what is an SNY gang, Hector, first and foremost? All right, sensitive needs yard, protective custody, PC. When an inmate can no longer program on a general population yard. And I have to say this 100%. Just because you're on an SNY yard doesn't mean that you have bad paperwork. Doesn't mean that this is the lingo I'm going to use, trash or garbage. Why? How do I know? Because I met and talked to a lot of individuals in there that got dealt the wrong cards, right? I'm talking like prison language here. I'm not going to go beyond this. And because of politics and everything else that goes with this, they simply got put in the hat, right? I don't like the way you look. I don't like you. I don't like the way your eyebrow doesn't have a split in the middle. It looks like a unibrow. It irritates me. We're putting you in the hat. We're going to stab you. Stuff like that, right? You guys are catching my drift. So, the 2-5ers, right? 2-5ers, that's a big gang, SNY, kind of made up, I'm not going to say primarily of former Southsiders, Sureños, but it's like, let's just say that for now, right? To simplify things. 2-5ers, how do they identify themselves? All right. They'll have a tattoo of like a quarter, a 2-5. What else they got? DC, you know, the skateboarding shoe DC for 2-5. In Spanish, it stands for 2-5, right? They got all this going on. I am 100% sure up in Northern California or even Central California that those gangs are with the business, right? Because I've had coworkers tell me, hey, it is rocking and rolling over here. They're more violent than the GP. Well, Donovan was not like that, right? And even the gang members would tell me, like, they would say, like, they would come down and they would tell on each other. They'll be like, oh, they want me to push this type of politics. We ain't about that. I told them we are not in Kern Valley. We are not in Salinas. We don't do that here. They do other stuff. It's weird, right? So that's kind of how I caught the gist of things, right? So then the Northern Riders started touching down. They tried pushing their little politics, right? It's just, to me, what it seemed like was little gangs. Like, I'm from Brawley, right? You had Brole, you had Chicali. They were nemesis. They probably still are nemesis. I don't know. It seemed like little skirmishes, right? Like, you guys are, you, we're here. We don't like each other. We're just going to fight all the time. That's what it kind of seemed like. Different races and different gangs. Yeah, you can have like I said, a different race. It wasn't solely like, oh, if you're a Mexican only, you can be in 2-5. You had 2-5ers, green lighters, independent riders, northern riders, the GBGs, which are the gay boy gangsters. Didn't really know much about them, but they had a few. And for the most part, I'm telling you, Donovan was wild, man. They would just terrorize the cops, right? These new cops, man, they were eating them alive. It was like sharks in like a goldfish pond, right? Like, it was all bad. It's just, and then you have administration just not making the matters better, right? Incompetence. It's a cesspool, right? So, do they? Here's a good question. Let's say you were a somebody as an active sureño, right? And because you were a somebody, that position allowed you to get a lot of people hurt, right? I mean, that's just politics, right? It just, hey, cards fall, they fell on you, smashed you, right? Now you went to this side. Now you're SNY. Now you're over here. Now, because of the way politics goes, now your house of cards just fell. Now you're over here in SNY. Does this person hold a grudge against this person because he was the one that put him in the hat? Now they're both SNY. It's a damn good question. Very rarely. Very rarely. And if it does happen, that fool's just going to take off on him. The dude's just going to take off on him. Like, unless he did him dirty, I don't even know. I mean, this seems all to me being done dirty, right? Ain't nobody like to get stabbed. But, you don't see a lot of that. You don't see a lot of that. Sometimes you very rarely see it, and then when he goes off on them, you find out, right? People talk, and then you're like, "Oh, what was that about?" Oh, that homie's the one that put me in the hat. That when we were mainline, this dude did that, this, and the other. He got his. Yeah, he did. Look at his eye, right? Look at his jaw, right? So that's a good insight for you guys, man. The Prison Guard channel. So I'm allowing you guys to see things you wouldn't normally see, right? Hear things you wouldn't normally hear. And I do it in a way that's going to keep the masses safe, right? Never going to jeopardize anything. That would be ridiculous and out of line. So do they bring in drugs? Yeah, man, it's prison. It's prison. Except their program isn't like their illicit activity isn't wired down tight. Like I said, it's probably biased. I was in Donovan, right? It was a freaking free-for-all. It did not seem organized. It seemed like, hey, this homie's going to bring in dope over here when he comes back from visit. I'm going to cold clock him, steal it from his butt, and then I'm going to swallow it, and then I'm going to say that he raped me. He's going to go to the hole. Now I got the dope, right? It was just weird. Like, now I got the dope. Now everybody wants to be this guy's homie. Everybody gets high. Overdoses, goes out to the hospital. I need 20 officers for a 911. Overtime, right? It was just off the hook. Can't explain it. Don't want to explain it. Well, that message is to the right thing, wherever you're at. Keep pushing forward.